Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today, we'll continue following the tense and moving developments in the story of single mother Hoai and police officer Hung. In the previous episode, you'll remember that Tony, Hoai's small but resilient son, was rushed to the hospital with a serious illness. Hoai and Hung stayed by his side throughout those days, torn between worry and hope. 3 long days have passed, and today is the decisive moment as the test results are finally handed over. Will that piece of paper bring hope, or shatter their dream of a peaceful future? But that's not all. A long-buried secret suddenly resurfaces, and the first to face it is Tieu San, Hung's younger sister. She receives shocking news directly tied to her and her brother's true identities. A truth hidden for years is now laid bare, leaving them both stunned, unsettled, and full of doubt. Tony's medical results and the earth-shattering secret about Hung and Tieu San will intertwine, making this a day of upheaval. Every look, every word today could alter their fates. Watch closely, one moment of distraction and you might miss the most crucial piece of the story. The good news came unexpectedly, like a cool, gentle breeze sweeping in during long, weary days, dispelling the heavy fog clouding Hoai's mind. When the doctor handed her the test results, her hands trembled slightly, and her heart pounded. Her eyes scanned each clearly printed line. Tony was perfectly healthy, with no signs of any dangerous illness. The sleepless nights, the countless hours spent by his hospital bed, the quiet tears she had shed, all now felt like a nightmare slowly dissolving. It turned out that the prolonged high fevers were simply caused by a viral infection, a common illness that had nonetheless drained the strength of his small body. The doctor gave detailed instructions: keep a close watch, administer fever-reducing medicine on time, ensure hydration and nutrition, and let him rest well. Tony would recover quickly. Still, for complete peace of mind, the hospital advised a follow-up checkup in 6 months. Hoai nodded repeatedly, as if etching the words into her memory, silently grateful that fate had spared her the loss of hope. In that moment, relief spread through her entire body. It felt as though a heavy stone had been lifted from her chest. Days and nights filled with anxious dread gave way to an overwhelming happiness. She clutched the test results, not merely as a medical record, but as a talisman, proof that her son would keep growing, keep smiling. Her eyes stung, but the tears that fell were those of gratitude and joy. From the moment she heard the news, Grandma's face lit up, looking as if she had grown 10 years younger. She gathered Tony into her arms, pressing her cheek against his soft hair, her hands trembling yet filled with tenderness. Turning to Hoai, she spoke with certainty. "Don't worry, just go to work. I'll take care of him here." Her voice carried not only reassurance but also a promise. Hoai would never have to fight alone. The atmosphere in the small house was different today. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the window, resting on the old tiled floor and casting a warm golden glow. Tony's laughter rang out bright and clear as his grandmother ruffled his hair, blending with the soft bubbling of tea boiling on the stove. Every corner of the house seemed to share in the joy, no longer weighed down by illness and worry, but alive with warmth, hope, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Since the day Hoai returned to Hung's side, the atmosphere in the small house had changed, subtly, yet unmistakably. The morning lights seemed clearer, laughter and conversation drifted through every room, and family meals felt warmer than before. Yet, in a quiet corner, the man who had once silently loved Hoai chose to step out of that circle. He took a job at a mechanical workshop nearly 10 kilometers away. Ha's decision to work outside wasn't merely about earning a living. In part, it was to avoid Hoai's gaze, those familiar eyes that seemed to see right through to the deepest, most hidden corners of his heart. That look reminded him of the time he had cared for her quietly, harbored silent hopes, only to accept that her heart now belonged to someone else. The other reason was that Hoai needed a quiet space of his own, a place free from the stir of unnamed emotions, where he could steady himself and reflect. The days of hard labor began. Before dawn, he rose, slung on a worn jacket, and stepped into the mist-covered road in scuffed shoes. Sweat and dust clung to the fabric, fine drizzle chilled his shoulders, but Hoai remained steadfast. He realized that the hurried pace of work, the roar of machines, and the constant occupation of his hands were the medicine that kept him from sinking into restless thoughts. Time spent away gave him more than wages to help the family. It gave him clarity. During short breaks, sipping lukewarm tea, Hoai came to understand that his feelings for Lythieuca, however deep, needed to be set down. Love didn't always mean holding on. Sometimes, letting go was the only way to give the one you cared for true happiness. One afternoon, after weeks of work, Hoai returned home. In his hands was a small bag of gifts, worth far more than their price. He said little, just smiled, eyes carrying a trace of anticipation. One by one, he brought them out. For Tony, a small pale blue cap, the very color the boy had once excitedly pointed to while passing a shop. For Lythieuca, a simple yet thoughtfully chosen outfit, as though he had spent hours deciding. And for his mother, a pair of sturdy shoes, perfectly fitted as if measured to the last centimeter. Grandma Hoai accepted the gift, her eyes glistening. She brushed her fingers lightly over the shoes, feeling each careful stitch, then looked up at her son with pride. She knew the change in him came not only from the work outside, but from the growth in his heart. In her own way, she felt gratitude toward Lythieuca, who, even indirectly, had been part of this transformation. That evening, the house was filled with laughter. Tony put on his new cap and ran circles around the yard. Lythieuca smiled softly, and Hoai, though he said nothing, felt warmth spread through his chest. Beneath the casual remarks and shared glances, the ties between them tightened, not through unrequited love, but through respect, shared burdens, and the quiet warmth of people who had weathered life's storms together. As for Hoai, the past few days had been nothing short of a desperate race. He had poured out every ounce of strength, selling off all the possessions he had spent years accumulating, from his well-worn motorbike, to a few treasured valuables, even down to keepsakes he had never imagined parting with. But even that wasn't enough. He went knocking on the doors of old friends, reaching out to connections he had rarely called upon before, clinging to one hope alone: to gather enough money to pay off his mother's massive debt and reclaim the house that had once been their family's safe haven. But reality was harsher than he had imagined. The debt was not only enormous, it was growing by the day, interest piling on top of interest, swelling like a bottomless pit. Each time he recalculated, the numbers felt like a cold blade cutting into his resolve. Hoai had thought that if he just pushed a little harder, found just one more source of credit, he might be able to turn things around. But now, he had to face a painful truth: the house was gone, forever beyond his reach. That afternoon, Hoai made the decision to visit Tieu San, the little sister he had always tried to shield from the world's cruelties. He knew this conversation would be one of the hardest moments of his life. It wasn't just about telling her they had lost the house, it was about revealing a secret he had kept locked away for years, a truth that could upend every memory, every belief Tieu San had ever held about their family. His steps felt heavier with every turn as he walked down the familiar alley toward the small room where Tieu San lived. A single question kept echoing in his mind: how will she react? Will she be strong enough to accept it? He wasn't afraid of her anger. What he feared most was the look in her eyes, filled with hurt, confusion, and the loss of trust. Hoai clenched his fists and took a deep breath before knocking on the door. He knew that once it opened, the two of them would have to face a devastating truth about their mother, and about their own identities. There was no way back, and no more time to delay. ChatGPT said. As soon as Hung stepped up to Tieu San's door, the first thing he saw was her standing face to face with her ex-husband, their voices tight as bowstrings. Sharp, fragmented words cut through the heavy afternoon air, mingling with the noise of traffic from the street. Tieu San's face was flushed, her fists clenched, while the man before her frowned, his expression a mix of frustration and helplessness. Hung quickened his pace, moving to stand between them, his voice low but firm. "All right, both of you, calm down, whatever it is, talk it through." He didn't want curious neighbors lingering to gossip, and even more so, he didn't want Tieu San's young child overhearing such bitter words. After a while, with Hung's patient tone and steady presence, their voices softened. Her ex-husband let out a long sigh, saying he'd leave for now and return another day to take their child out. Once the man's figure disappeared down the narrow alley, the small courtyard in front of the house fell quiet again. Tieu San leaned lightly against the doorframe, still trembling slightly from the argument. Hung looked at her, his eyes thoughtful, as though searching for the right words, yet hesitating to speak. Sensing something unusual, Tieu San stepped fully outside to face her brother. Her gaze narrowed, probing yet steady. "Brother, I know you're not here today just to visit me. Whatever it is, just say it. I'm not a child anymore. Whatever the truth is, I can handle it." Her voice wasn't loud, but each word seemed to slice through the silence. She met his eyes directly, without flinching. Hung drew in a deep breath. He knew the moment had arrived, the moment to tear away the veil of secrets that had shrouded their childhood, no matter how much it might shatter Tieu San's heart. Hung sat in silence for a long moment, as if gathering every last shred of courage. His eyes locked on Tieu San's, no longer circling around the point. "San, I'm going to tell you everything, and I'll only say it once." His voice sank lower, each word weighted with the burden of years. He explained how, all this time, their mother had been drowning in debt, borrowing money everywhere, even mortgaging the family home, the place where so many of their memories were rooted. Hung had sold everything he could, scraped together loans from relatives, friends, even from contacts he'd never imagined turning to, all in the hope of paying down the debt and saving their home. But with interest piling on interest, the debt became a monster devouring every effort he made. In the end, the house was gone, and all he was left with was a crushing sum still hanging over his shoulders. Tieu San froze, speechless, but before she could respond, Hung went on. This time his voice dropped so low it was almost a confession he himself struggled to believe. "San, there's something else. You need to be very calm while you listen. Mother, she once hired someone to harm Hoai. And it wasn't just to threaten or rough her up, she wanted her dead." He paused for a beat, then said slowly. "She hired thugs to beat Hoai and throw her into the river." The words cracked through the stillness like a bolt of lightning. Tieu San's eyes widened, her expression shifting from shock to utter disorientation. She searched her memory for the image of the woman who had raised her, the strict, unyielding, sometimes domineering mother, but she had never imagined her capable of such cruelty. Hung continued, his voice breaking. "Luckily, a fisherman near the riverbank, pulled her out in time. If not, you wouldn't see Hoai sitting here today. She's recovered physically, but the wounds inside are far from healed." Tieu San sat motionless, her hands clasped tightly together. She didn't cry, but her eyes were clouded, as if trying to separate reality from a waking nightmare. She had always known their mother's possessiveness, her need to control her children's every move. But this was something darker entirely, a kind of malice she never thought could exist in her own bloodline. The air in the room grew heavy, so still they could almost hear the seconds ticking by. Hung watched his sister, knowing this moment would be etched into both their memories forever, like a wound that would never fully fade. Hung stayed silent for a long time before he finally spoke. His eyes grew solemn, as if every word he was about to utter carried an immeasurable weight. At last, he said, his voice hoarse and deliberate. "San, there's something else, something that may shock you, but I can't keep it from you any longer. The woman we've called Mother all these years, she isn't our biological mother." Tieu San froze, staring at her brother in disbelief, as though she had misheard him. Hung went on, each word slicing through the air like a blade. "Our real mother left the family when you were only a few months old. I was still too young then, and I can only recall vague glimpses of her. Later, Father married her, the woman we've been calling Mother. She couldn't have children of her own, so when she married Dad, she took us in as if we were her own, raised us, and gave us her love." Hung let out a long sigh, his gaze dropping to the floor, before continuing. "But that love was overshadowed by her need to control everything. She wanted every detail to bend to her will, and when conflict arose, she never hesitated to resort to extreme measures. Now, she's drained every bit of the family's assets, left me with a crushing debt, and run away to avoid facing the consequences." Tieu San sat in stunned silence. Memories of their childhood blurred in her mind, moments of warmth tangled with flashes of her mother's sudden, inexplicable anger. She had never once questioned their blood ties. To her, Mother was simply Mother. Hung looked at her, his voice deepening, tinged with bitterness. "I know, as children, whether by blood or not, we still owe our parents respect. But there are truths you need to know, so you can understand why things have become the way they are." Tieu San said nothing, but her eyes brimmed with tears, a mix of shock and pain. It felt as if the very foundation of her family had been torn away, leaving behind a cold, gaping void she had no idea how to fill. Hung gently placed a hand on his sister's shoulder, giving it a light squeeze as if to pass some of his strength to her. Though his eyes were weary from days of unrelenting strain, there was still a steadfast light in them. "San, I know this is more than anyone should have to bear. But I hope the two of us can get through it together. Even if we lose the house, the money, or even our trust, I still want us to have each other." He paused for a moment, then continued, his voice slow and thoughtful. "In the future, if our biological mother truly comes back, I hope you can listen with a calm heart. Maybe she had her own reasons, pains we've never known. If you can understand and forgive her, then do it. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing ourselves from the weight we carry." Hung exhaled softly, as if releasing part of the burden in his chest. "And I don't want you to feel too much guilt toward the stepmother who left. We truly did everything we could. Even if she chose to walk away, that doesn't erase what we gave her." Tieu San remained silent, her eyes reddened. Deep down, she felt the warmth in his words, a warmth not only born of sibling love, but of someone who had endured enough hardship to know that, sometimes, forgiveness is the only way to move forward. So then, where will Hung and Tieu San's path lead from here? Will the two siblings be able to follow the faint traces, the few fragile clues left behind, to find the biological mother who vanished so many years ago? Where is that woman now? What kind of life is she living? And does her heart still hold a corner for the two children she left behind? This search could lead them to a tearful reunion, or open a door to painful truths they were never prepared to face. And what about Hoai? After all the relentless turmoil, has she grown strong enough to set aside her wounds, return to the place once called home, and continue writing warm days with Hung? Or do silent trials still lie ahead, storms yet unnamed, ready to sweep away the fragile peace that has only just begun to return? In her heart, trust and fear are locked in a quiet struggle, and it would take only one more blow to tip the scales entirely. Time, the only one holding all the answers, keeps flowing silently. But one thing is certain, from this moment on, every decision, every step they take will be a vital piece in shaping the full picture of their fate. It could become a canvas painted in bright tones, filled with joy and laughter, or it could be a darker portrait, where family bonds, love, and forgiveness are put to their harshest tests. Stay tuned for the next episodes, where each secret will be revealed, each wound will be laid bare, and the greatest question will begin to find its answer. Will their love and connection be strong enough to overcome everything, or will it shatter under the weight of destiny?
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Thì hôm nay mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện về mẹ đơn thân Lythieuca. Mọi người ơi, như mọi người cũng đã biết thì ở trong tập trước mẹ đơn thân Lythieuca thì đã phải rất là buồn bã và đau khổ vì Tony, con trai của cô, mắc phải một căn bệnh khá là hiếm gặp, và bác sĩ đã phải yêu cầu là chờ 3 ngày để đợi kết quả. Nhưng mà rất là may mắn thì hiện tại kết quả của Tony ổn định và không sao hết. Tuy nhiên bác sĩ vẫn yêu cầu gia đình là sẽ phải tái khám lại sau một khoảng thời gian nữa để có thể chắc chắn là bé ấy không bị bệnh gì. Và ở trong tập này thì đã có một bí mật sốc được Hùng nói với Tieu San, đó là bí mật về thân thế của Hùng và Tieu San. Như mọi người cũng biết, cảnh sát Hùng và Tieu San là hai anh em. Vậy thì bí mật về gia thế và người mẹ ruột của Hùng là ai thì mời mọi người đón xem ở video tiếp theo ở ngày mai nha mọi người.